A figure who occupies a similar place in mixed martial arts as Floyd Mayweather does in boxing is a fighter named Josh Koscheck, who most recently lost to George St. Pierre in a welterweight title fight in Montreal in December. When the fight was made and announced between those two, Koscheck did a very Mayweather-esque thing. He did media interviews, and he called for full-on Mayweather-Mosley-esque, if I can refer to it in shorthand, drug testing. And, the quote was, "I would love to do it. Why not? I think Olympic-style testing would be great for our sport. At least you do it a couple times out from the fight. I think it will be a great idea." St. Pierre totally agreed. Of course, it was sort of laced with implications for the camps that somehow Koscheck was intimating that St. Pierre ought to be tested, that he was on something and deserved suspicion. But, divorced from that context, Josh Koscheck was saying this is good for the sport. And then the promoter of the UFC President Dana White, came out and said, no. He said, quote, "I think that's what an athletic commission is for. The athletic commissions have been around for a long time. When fighters start talking about other guys being drug tested, shut up. Worry about you. It's been a long time since somebody on our roster tested positive for steroids. When we first took over, guys were popping here and there, and I said, you have to be a moron to do steroids in this sport. It's just dumb." The next thing we hear from Koscheck, "Media stories on comments I made about rumors of GSP are in no way factual. I'm known for polarizing comments, and I got caught up in hyping the Ultimate Fighter in our fight. I was wrong and apologize to GSP for trying to invalidate his hard work and talent." That can't sit entirely well with you.
No, not at all. The bigger, the issue you touch on is individual athletes being able to express their desire and to promote change for the good for them, from a health, from a safety, and from enforcing the rules that are there, despite what it might ultimately do in the short term to the profits that others are making. And I think, I don't know all the detail of what you just said, but hearing what you said just frankly sends chills down my spine, because it tells me athletes aren't able to voice their opinion about their rights without it being shut down.
Yes, I don't think there's any...
That is contrary to what we're here about. We're here to stand up for athletes. And look, we know it's tough, and we've heard it's tough. And particularly prior to us as an independent agency coming into existence, you frequently heard athletes were scared to speak out because they didn't want to be, taken off the playing field and, sat on the end of the bench so someone else who wasn't going to speak freely or truthfully about what was really going on in the culture. And so that's the group of athletes we're here to represent. And we're here to say those people can align with us at any point, and we will carry that torch for them and fight and get in and mix it up and call people out where they need to be called out for not doing everything possible within their authority to ensure the rules are enforced. That's what we're talking about. Look, Don't have the rule. That's what I say. If you think people are willing to pay to see, a chemical freak show, do away with the rule. And let's call it what it is. But don't operate under this premise that you're operating a clean sport where clean athletes can possibly thrive when you know better, when you know the culture is not that way. That's what just, frankly infuriates us. And really it touches on the vulnerability or the weakness of some athletes. And it does take courage to step up and speak out against, that culture. And look, it ain't easy, but we're happy to play that role for clean athletes.
Yeah, it almost, there's almost this ingrained sense of justified lying when it comes to using certain substances. It's not on the banned substance list in the state in which I'm fighting. If they drug test at all, as well as I do, there are states that still don't drug test and hold combat sports events all the time. And Tony Margarito found refuge in Texas to most recently fight Manny Pacquiao. That wasn't a drug testing issue, that was a hand wrap issue. But you can commission shop, you can go to places where that no matter what is in your athlete's body, the fight's going to go off. And to what degree is that something one can do anything about? I suppose it's up to the Association of Boxing Commissions, the sort of national umbrella body for all state athletic commissions. But I mean, is there any way to to get to a point where every state has the same requirements for testing? It would seem a reasonable thing, but when you put that to folks, it almost sounds like the most unwieldy and illogical and impossible to achieve thing they could possibly think of as a commission.
I'm with you. I mean, look, this might be too blunt, but you know, the money people don't want this happening,
right?
Because it might change the dramatic effect of what currently is being seen within the ring. So that's what's really going on here. You know, I hope, and look, I testified at the Nevada State Athletic Commission, and I said this. I hope it's not a big-time scandal like baseball had to suffer with Balco for them finally to put in the right program and in a decent, effective program. I more importantly hope it doesn't take, you know, some athletes actually dying from these dangerous drugs. I really hope it doesn't come to that, and I hope that, you know, whether it's us asking the tough questions or being, you know, having the courage to stand up and say, "Look, Nevada, your program's a joke. Come on." You know, that's not a role we like to play, but if we truly believe in the rights of clean athletes, that's our obligation to do that.
Yeah,
and,
to
and
speak
you
in
better
such
believe
terms.
we're going to do that. But you know, what is it going to ultimately take outside of scandal, some serious health consequences, or some sort of media pressure to get them to do the right thing? I'm, you know, it's not necessarily in their financial interest, so I don't foresee it happening.
Right. Yeah, that seems to move the meter more often than not in combat sports, and perhaps in any sport in general. Although I think combat sports are a lot more of a fight-to-fight, promotion-to-promotion business, and less stable than your typical major sports with seasons and kind of reliable television revenue streams. It relies so heavily on being able to promote and position certain fighters in certain ways and tell certain stories to sell pay-per-view orders that you take two or three guys out of the equation and it just becomes an unfathomable challenge for a lot of promoters. We're not just talking about mixed martial arts and boxing, professional wrestling. They have no government regulation and have issues with that as well, having to pull guys that draw big crowds off TV because so many of those folks have died. And I'm glad you touched on dangerousness, because I'll tell you, Travis, every time we talk about steroids or get at the performance-enhancing drugs conversation on the Sherdog Radio Network, I get the emails, and I'm sure they're typed right next to a little vial of Deca from people who say, there's no ill health effects to this. You know, I can counter every research point you can mention about any steroid, and in fact, the only fair thing is to let people really let athletes put what they want into their bodies and allow that free for all you talked about. I mean, people have convinced themselves that is just, that makes sense, and that there is no price to be paid medically for doing this. It's just a question of fairness. Can you get at that idea for us? I mean, is this stuff dangerous?
I mean, you know, on a real simple level, okay, if we think the culture, you know, if we think that is a culture people want to see, or we're truthful and we recognize that is in fact the culture, despite what our rules are, just change the rules and make it open, make it honest, don't continue the sporting fraud for those who might want to hang on to some belief that it's something that, you know, is not that drug-infested culture. So just do away with the rule. I mean, of course, I'm not going to advocate that. I don't think the free market advocates that. I think at the end of the day, the reason, you know, sports don't do that is because fans would go away, and fans don't want to buy tickets for a freak show. You can go to the circus, right, and you can go, you know, see, you know.
Or a steroid taker.
Yeah, I mean, you know, that's not, the free market's not going to support that. What sport is, and why sport is unique in this country as an influencer, but also as something people want to rally behind, and why it brings communities together, is because it's us. It's our you know, dreams one day that we see through other people, and the belief that, hey, maybe I could have hit 70 home runs because, you know, I worked hard and I stayed extra batting practice and I had great coaches, as opposed to, I just injected myself with a bunch of steroids or whatever the case may be. And obviously, speaking in hypotheticals, the other thing that opening it up would do, one, it would create an arms race between the athletes. So you would literally have athletes pushing themselves to get as big, strong, fast as they can on these drugs at, in abusive doses, more so than might currently be going on, push them closer to that brink of death or serious adverse health consequences. The other is the role model effect. I mean, let's be candid. Despite what elite athletes want sometimes, and you remember the Charles Barkley, well, I'm not anybody's role model and you shouldn't look at me as a role model. They're role models. And they're on Sports Illustrated, they're on, your show, they're on ESPN. That's what kids see. And kids idolize these athletes. And if we suddenly, open it up where it's known they can use them, or everyone knows they're using but nothing is done, what's going to happen? Well, it's exactly what we saw happen in the late 90s and early 2000s in this country, the trickle-down effect, where you now, as a young athlete, high school athlete, junior high athlete, or lower, have to use these drugs in order to achieve the athletic dreams that you had as a 6-year-old, as a 7-year-old. And that is an untenable situation that we just can't afford to have, or we're truly going to lose a generation of athletes. And people, whether they turn out to be elite athletes or not. The second, I think, important characteristic there is if you don't crack down on it, and it's okay to cheat as long as the culture allows it, that's a lesson that athletes at junior high school and high school are going to learn. Mm-hmm. And we ask the question, and not in a joking fashion, in a serious fashion. What lessons did Bernie Madoff learn as a high school athlete? Did he learn it was okay to crush your competitor in violating the rules? Did he learn it was okay to cheat your coach and cheat your competitor? And were those the same values that he learned through sport at the high school level or the college level that he then took into his business practices? And look, I don't even know if he played sports. I'm just telling you today, there are millions of kids in this country who are learning values through sport, and they have no other mechanism or avenue to learn those values. And if we don't protect the values that they're learning, they're going to eventually grow up to be terrible cheats and thieves in whatever profession, sports or otherwise, that they go into, all because of the values they learned as young athletes.
It's a power.